Hey friends, this is Jeff. Big month for us on YouTube and Patreon. We will continue to release our best content on these platforms moving forward. Well worth subscribing to Patreon and YouTube. The links are in the show notes. And speaking of Patreon, all of our Patreon releases flow easily into your podcast feed. So once you sign up, you can simply listen to them right there on your podcast platform of choice. This November 2024, we will be posting 3 very long, like 2-3 hour long interviews with the most informed people we know about their Enneagram type. The first up is Dr. Mary Slattery, Enneagram 6. Dr. Slattery has studied Enneagram under all the most amazing thinkers and routinely elevates the hearts of 6s in ways I have heard nowhere else. Lots of clarity and wisdom, and her interview will post November 8th. Next is the Joel Stabile, talking shop about Enneagram 7s. Joel, likewise, may have more conversations with Enneagram scholars than anybody else on the planet, and he is able to articulate the heart of 7s with real insight and understanding. That will post on November 15th. And lastly is our good friend Erica Jobs. Erica had one of the very first Enneagram podcasts, and as an Enneagram 8 has sat in this material for over 10 years. Her perspective on Enneagram is different than ours, but she is also responsible for some of the real breakthroughs TJ and I have had in understanding Enneagram. This is some of our best work and will be the Patreon releases for November. Then, coming in December 2024, we are going to release the next 3 drafted chapters of our upcoming book, Around the Circle. So more than half of our new book is up online for you to digest. Again, if you sign up for a paid membership prior to January 1st, we will send you 2 signed books. In 2025, we will send you the physical published version of Around the Circle next year, as well as a signed first edition of my first book, 7. We will also answer up to 3 Enneagram questions per month for you, and you will get the sheer joy and delight of helping us help other people find and enjoy the Enneagram. That's our plug. Thanks for listening. May all good things be yours. I'm Jeff Cook.
And I'm TJ Wilson.
And this is Around the Circle.
I'm walking slowly. I'm taking my time. All I could talking is starting to rhyme. I'm letting go of lonely, letting go of strife. I just can't get enough of this beautiful life.
The Enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships. It creates language for what motivates us and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the Enneagram is a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name is Jeff Cook. I'm a longtime professor of philosophy in Greeley, Colorado. And with me is TJ Wilson, coffee guru, lover of theology, and Enneagram ninja.
Hello.
My man.
Hey.
We are, for the most part, coming to the end of our You're New to This series. However, TJ and I have talked off air about this being kind of a recurring topic we keep coming back to.
People are coming to the Enneagram all the time, right?
We all need a refresher.
Right? Yeah.
Our last episode of this series is going to be on our steps. And one of our steps, our last step, is to take a break. It can be real helpful to take a break from Enneagram.
That's what they say, right?
But you don't want to just leave it there for years and years and years and go do something else.
Sure.
You should pick it up at some point. Where would you start when, like, re-picking up the Enneagram, TJ?
At the beginning?
Perhaps with this series that we are doing.
Hey, that's a great idea. New to this series.
Or returning to this, as it were.
There we go.
Next time we'll talk about our 7 steps, and then we'll end our We're New to This series. But for now, I'm going to talk about just like, what does it look like to start? Not just Enneagram, but sometimes like it's the start of the year is coming up. Sometimes just doing kind of like a self-evaluation and inventory. What is it called when you send your car in and they do all the tests all at once?
Right. The two not car mechanics.
Is it
Talking about car
diagnostics?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go
full
with that.
diagnostic. Yeah. There it is. Yeah. That's what they say when I take my car in. We ran a full diagnostic.
You could do that with your car. I bet you could do that with your house, like spring cleaning checklist and nail all those things. I assume, what's that?
You do it with your computer.
Right. TJ does know.
You
on
know
these
all
fronts.
about that.
You can do it with your body. I imagine you go into the doctor, they do blood work and the rest.
Allegedly.
And doing the full diagnostic of your inner life, that could be helpful.
Yeah.
Like, what would that even look like? For some of us, you're like, do we need that? Is that a thing? Like, where would you even start?
Yeah. And I say the answer is yes.
That's what we're going to be talking about this time. Like, as you start, sometimes it's worth doing just the full diagnostic of your inner life. That would be like your mental life and your relational life. You can kind of like, where are you at? Kind of at a bone soul level. And we got 10 questions that we're going to ask. Before I do this, however, hey, guess what?
What?
It is presently December 11th is when this is releasing.
Yeah.
You know what else is releasing today on our Patreon?
I tried to think of something funny to say, and I got nothing.
There's pictures of my dogs.
Perfect. I love it.
On the Patreon, I'm going to upload a conversation. We are doing our 20 questions series with a handful of great Enneagram thinkers. Many of you are fans of Joey Shuey's work. We may release that later on our podcast feed, but if you are a paying member, you can grab the first half of that right now. Just go to aroundthecircle.org and good times. It's there. Well, you and I have gone to a therapist.
Once or twice. Not together. We've never gone together before.
no couple therapy for us. At least not yet. Right. When you start finishing each other's sentences, then you really do need to go probably. But when you go, so I don't know what to expect. What do you expect? Sometimes they will just have some opening questions, kind of get a feel for who you are, where you're at. These can be get to know you questions, but oftentimes they are also kind of trying, testing the water, seeing what's there. The therapist is there to help you. And so those questions can be quite, you can navigate from them. Now, TJ, are you a therapist?
I am not an actual therapist.
Don't even play one on the YouTubes?
Oh, no. I play one on the YouTubes all the time. Okay, not the YouTubes, but I play one in life, but I'm not a real one.
I want to hit some questions that you might get asked in that setting. TJ and I are not therapists, but these questions can be very helpful in highlighting what Enneagram does.
Yeah.
As we walk through these questions, for TJ and I, it's kind of like pulling back the curtains and just saying, look, here's kind of the overlap of some of the bigger topics going on inside of us and where the Enneagram might speak into those. So if you're new to this, it's real helpful to kind of know what the tool is about. Like what should you be expecting with using the Enneagram when coming there? So that's where we're going to go.
Love it.
For those of you, many of you are driving or you're lawn mowing or snow shoveling. I suppose it's December. This may be one of those podcasts where you pull out a piece of paper. It may be one of those podcasts for many of us. We actually need to sit down occasionally and just do some journal work.
Right.
And what I would love to invite you to do is either now or in the future, come back to this podcast and get a piece of paper and kind of do an inventory of some of the answers to the sorts of questions that we're going to be asking. Yeah. And as we go through them, we'll pitch this what the Enneagram's about, but just the exercise of kind of walking through some of these questions can be incredibly helpful. So
if you're doing something that you can't pick up pen and paper, you could just do like me and just talk to us as though we're in the room. I do that with podcasts all the time.
You guys are totally wrong on this.
There are a lot of community podcasts that do not get some central themes in community.
gotta push pause, give your own take,
Yeah.
let it continue.
Yep.
I got you on that. There's one of my favorite podcasts in the world brought up Enneagram the other day and used a terrible word to describe it.
Oh, I love it.
And push pause and I made this long argument, went back to playing it.
Yep.
Got home, sent a little email.
Love it.
Because you know what the world needs is more people yelling about things.
Correcting strangers on the internet.
Yes, this will not stand. First thing worth writing down is, why did you push play on this podcast? You clearly have come to this topic, Enneagram. Why? It may be recommended to you by a friend, by a loved one. It may be the case that you've heard that this sort of stuff could be helpful, but you pushed play. What brings you here? What perhaps in your life, if it is the case that you're just, coming because somebody recommended it to you, that's great. But it also might be the case that you came with some current challenges in mind. You might have some things that are like stressors in your life. They're just worth naming. And it might be the case, if you're like me, when I come to Enneagram podcast, I do it partially, to inform myself about, the work that we're doing. But a lot of times when I listen to Enneagram podcasts, I'm actually doing some work and I'm bringing, look, this is the relationship that's kind of sour. This is the financial stress that I have. These are the things that I'm putting my attention into. And those are also in the back of my mind. So what is in the back of your mind? You got thoughts on where on that, or on places Enneagram speaks to that?
Well, yeah, I think that like the most recent time that I started therapy, one of the questions, I mean, this is one of the questions that they ask coming in, like, what are you doing here? What are you looking for? And one of the things that I need when I go to therapy is somebody who can take the things that I say and show me how to look at them a little bit differently. Like I can do all of the Enneagram study in the world, and that doesn't necessarily solve the way I see things. And for me, sometimes I need another person to say, here it is. Here's what you're looking at. Just turn it a little bit.
Yep.
And that is a big part of what the Enneagram is. It's helping us see things a little bit differently. It's helping us get to sort of like the thing underneath the thing. And a lot of us really need help with that.
The thing under the thing. Enneagram is going to be super helpful on these sorts of fronts of exposing the thing under the thing, because it will often talk about how we're filtering the world.
Right.
And among many other things that Enneagram wants to do, oftentimes the power, the significance, why it affects us, we can put some language to it.
Yeah.
And Enneagram is going to be super instructive on that front.
Yep.
Second thing worth writing down is just your personal history. All of us have very different stories and very different backgrounds. We have different family lives. We have different upbringings. We have different relationships that were part of the start of our lives, the middle of our lives. People come in and out of your life. And some people are long time presences in our lives. And it's just worth writing down, like, here are the 5 to 10 most important relationships to me.
Right.
And even like how they affect me. Why is this person so significant in your life? Should so-and-so's opinion have a lot of power? Like, I really do want my dad's opinion to have a lot of power, or I really do want my spouse's opinion to have a lot of power. Just coming with the relationships that you have ends up being real helpful first step. And as we write down our relationships, I imagine for some of us who have a little bit longer story, we're also going to be able to see some of the big events in our lives that have shaped us. And those are worth writing down too. So people and events, like what are the people and places and events that have really shaped, who you are? Getting those on paper can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah, like we say that the Enneagram is a map of the human personality, right? And sometimes on the map, you need to know why you're there, but also you need to know like what stores are around me. Is there a 7-Eleven nearby? Is like what things shape the place where I'm at? And you need to be able to name those things. If you have a spouse or a partner, that person influences your life and the way that you live. If you have kids, if you have really hard relationships with your parents, or a crazy uncle that gets drunk at every holiday, like there's all of these things that are sort of around you, these people in your life that have made an impact. And this is another way of helping see where those pieces are that have influenced where you are.
Yep. Two things come up in my mind in terms of people and events when it comes to Enneagram. The thing with people is that they have Enneagram types also.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some chemistry there. And the more that you get into Enneagram, and especially if you're able to talk about these sorts of things with people that you love, your motive and their motive come together in kind of a, in a chemical reaction, as it were. And it's almost predictable most of the time, like this type and this type, when they come together, here's where they're really going to thrive together. And here's where they're really going to struggle together. And being able to name that can be incredibly important throughout your relationships. I came to Enneagram just right before my mom passed away. Found out her Enneagram type, but a lot of my thoughts now, I still have a relationship with my mom, as it were. I'm processing a lot of my past and her story and my story through these filters. And that's been instructive for me. It's been helpful for me. It's places that expose my own shortcomings and expose her shortcomings, but it also can expose, this is why we connected and where we connected.
Right. And it gives us a little more space for, like, it's really easy to be mad at someone for doing something you don't like. But when you understand why they did it, it can often lead to a little bit more compassion, maybe some healing, empathy. Like it may not fix the problems, but it is so much easier to navigate things when you understand what's on the table.
Yep. So to events. So if we have traumatic events in our lives, the power of those events is going to come from within us. We're interpreting events. And that's really like the things that many of us are going to say, this was a traumatic experience for me, for example. The reason that it feels traumatic is because we've interpreted it as such.
Right.
And so some events in your life would never have hit me. And some of the events in my life would never have hit you.
Right.
And you can't change how you process the world, but you can name it. You can name how you're taking those things in and why they have such power and significance to you. Enneagram does a great job of naming that filter and why the events in our lives have so much power to them.
Right. Right. Yeah. If Jeff has a significant event of like losing a sports game in his youth, that impacts him in a way that it doesn't impact me. But at the same time, it's also possible that there is some type of sports game lost in my history that helps inform the fact that I don't like sports games now.
Yes.
Right? That could have changed what I wanted in the world because I lost that thing. And if I don't recognize that event had a huge impact on me, if there is one of those events, I've blocked it out. So more therapy for me. But if we don't recognize that those events had an impact, then we aren't going to be able to do the things that need to be done.
Yep. Of all things, I never lost sport events because I was always on the bench because I was always the smallest.
Oh, yeah.
But that experience of not really being, one who got thrown into the game ends up having huge relevance.
Yep.
In terms of how I see myself in the future.
Yep.
Much more so than I was actually state champion in speech and debate.
Sure.
That actually has had very little effect. The successes, as it were, far less effect than the why don't you sit over here? You're not good enough to play would be a way that I might phrase that. Third thing worth writing down is your current life situation. It's worth just taking an inventory of like, where are you right now?
Right.
What's your job, your school, your family dynamics, your social life? How you feeling about these things? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was putting this list together this morning and thinking, as many apparently many males in the year 2024 are, that I actually don't have a whole ton of friends right now. A lot of my work is isolated work.
Yeah.
And so that means I don't have as many micro interactions or even just like common day-to-day interactions with other folks. And that matters.
Right.
It matters to my heart. It matters to my ability to connect with the world, myself, and, just experience life at a richer level. And I probably need to name that.
Right. Because if you don't, then you might be stuck here for a really long time. And then you turn into a weird, bitter old man who doesn't have any friends and is mad about it. It'd be rough.
No showers. Except the only reason I did my hair this morning was because I was going to be on this podcast.
Yeah. But realistically, you won't get to that place because your wife and your work wife won't ever allow it. So long as me and Kelly are alive, you're safe.
She might just leave one day. You still smell. Out. Writing down those relationships, writing down where you are, work, school, social life, and the rest. Again, it's just a diagnostic. Like, where are you finding yourself? What's your daily routine?
Right.
Even perhaps, what are some of the environments that you occupy and enjoy? What are some of the environments that you don't enjoy? All of these things end up being important Enneagram wise, because Enneagram will speak to how we are connecting to the world and perhaps given our type, what we need to flourish and be a happy human being.
Right. But it's also really important to be able to acknowledge all of these things honestly without judgment. Acknowledging that I have sleep habit problems is a really good thing. Hating myself for having sleep problems is not going to be helpful. So we need to be honest about where we're at, what we're going through, what our rituals are. Do I exercise as much as I wish I did? Do I spend enough time with my family? Like, all of those things, we need to be able to acknowledge them and without judgment in this space, or we're not going to be able to move forward.
I think that's the line, is write this stuff out without judgment. And so
it's an assessment. It's not a value statement.
It may very well be the case that you have all these ambitions to, you need to drink less, you need to exercise more, you need to spend more time doing X, but just saying, this is who I am, where I'm at, what's your current life situation. That's a good exercise.
Yep.
Fourth thing worth writing down is some goals. And for this, you can obviously talk about any goals that you might want, but sometimes saying, here's some goals that I hope to achieve on my insides, that can be quite helpful as well. And maybe I'm the sort of person that needs to say that, because so much of my self-satisfaction and happiness seems to be derived from what I'm accomplishing out there, that I don't take time to say, am I becoming a kinder person, a more generous person, a more courageous person, etc. And saying, what do you, when doing some inner work like this, like, what do you hope to achieve? Do you want to be more loving toward your family members? Do you want to be a better presence to be around? What are some worthy goals on doing inner work?
Mm-hmm. And maybe there are some people listening that don't really have goals for Enneagram work. Your boss made you do a test, and this is the first thing that you found, and this is the first thing that you're listening to, and you're here because your boss made you. That's not really a goal, right? It can also be true in therapy. I have known people who go to couples counseling because their spouse wants them to go to couples counseling, and that's kind of the only reason, right? Immediately on the heels of saying no judgment, it's also the case that if you're here, there's a good chance that you should have goals. That maybe you can acknowledge that you don't have goals and you might want to.
Right.
So even if your goal is being open to change, that's a great goal. And you need to have some self-assessment to know that you might need to change some things, right?
That's it. An example of a goal of this for me, it's again kind of when I come to Enneagram work with some of my personal history in mind, is trying to mentally navigate how should I process that history, especially with people who are still alive, who I have this history with. Is it worth bringing up? If it's brought up, how do you talk through it? If I talk through it, what are some of the things that I'm hoping to achieve there?
Right.
Those are the sorts of things that I think really matter here. Enneagram is going to tell you a lot of your skills. It's going to show you a lot of your shortcomings, and it's going to perhaps paint a picture of what it looks like for your inner life to get more healthy. Fifth thing that you might want to write down goes along that way is, what are your strengths, and perhaps what are the ways that you solve problems? You and I come to the world, and we naturally have some abilities, and the world's coming at us, and how we address the world matters.
Yep.
So what are your strengths, and how do you commonly overcome problems? These are going to be huge topics with the Enneagram.
Right. I avoid conflict, right? And I, as a type 9, I don't like fighting. I don't like conflict. I shy away from it as much as possible. But that also means that I have a way of sort of like ignoring problems as a coping mechanism, because if I pay attention to that problem, there's going to be conflict. Sometimes that's okay, because the separation of time and ignoring my problem means that the problem kind of goes away on its own. And sometimes it's really bad, because it means I'm unwilling to do hard things that have to get done. If I am unaware of these kinds of coping mechanisms, the things that I'm bringing to the table, then I might be spinning in circles trying to address some of these inner life things.
Huge topics in Enneagram ends up being how we solve problems. And there's really healthy ways to solve problems. They're effective, that make you a better person, that heal relationships. There's a lot of really unhealthy ways to solve problems that might look like they temporarily do the job, but actually long-term really don't fix anything.
Right.
And Enneagram's gonna give you some language for that. So specifically, if you look at TJ and I's work, if you look up the topic coping style, you'll see some of this. That would be an entry point for this sort of thing.
Right.
But so too, in identifying how you are solving problems, I think it's really helpful to likewise pair that with your strengths. Like some things that you have that are strengths are not worth, getting rid of. It's worth saying, what's my healthiest self? What's my best self? Where am I really thriving? And how does that kind of overlap?
Right.
With navigating problems? That can be very helpful. Number 6 thing that is worth writing down is more about the routine emotions that you find yourself feeling. For some of us, we don't take an inventory of this too often, because our emotional life can be just the waters we swim in. But do we find that we have patterns of, I kind of live angry. I kind of live in an anxious state. I kind of live in a state of constant comparison. I find myself depressed. Where the emotional ruts, as it were, or emotional conduits that we consistently find ourselves traveling through, these are core to Enneagram and our self-perception. So You got thoughts there?
Yeah, and part of what both therapy and Enneagram work wants to do is help us see how we think about our feelings and how we feel about our thoughts and how we engage from that place in the rest of the world. Like there is an interplay here, and a lot of us were taught not to have feelings, and a lot of us were taught that the feelings that we did have were bad, and a lot of us were taught it's okay to be like just try and look for the happy all the time, right? And like there are so many things about how we navigate emotional life that can be very foreign. And what the Enneagram wants to give is space to recognize what your emotions are. As someone who deals with anger a lot, I am very aware that my anger is almost always covering up something else. And I want to know what the something else is, because the anger isn't serving me. It's covering up what I actually need to deal with.
Right.
And so our inner thought life, our inner emotional life, these are really good things to be in touch with. And it doesn't mean you have to be an emotional sap all the time, but you do have feelings and you should know what they are.
Yep. Alongside this, on the sixth thing you should write down is something like your self-perception.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you were to say, like, here are 5 words that describe me, that might be really helpful. And I imagine it's the case that for many of us, there might be a worthy, good word or two, but there might be some real critical things.
Yeah.
And being able to name both those can be, again, incredibly helpful when you come to Enneagram, because once you know your type and then you look at those words, probably is going to say a lot about your situation, where you need to work, what's worth giving up. So there's some views of ourselves that are really trash and garbage and need to be removed.
Right.
And then there are some self-perceptions where you're like, you know what, I probably just need to do some real work on that.
Right. And it is okay. Give yourself space to have contradictions and explore those contradictions, because they mean something. I am a very kind person, but I'm not a very nice person. These are not the same thing. And if I don't know that about myself, it's going to create problems in my life more than it already does.
Excellent example. A seventh thing worth writing down is about your social support. You already have on your list, here are the relationships I have in my life. It might be worth going another step and talking about the quality of your friendships, the quality of your romantic relationships. Yep. How close are your family connections? How close do you want your family connections to be? These are worth naming, just to again, take an inventory. Are you a supported human being, or are you actually finding yourself more and more isolated?
Mm-hmm. Or are you the primary support for too many people? Or a whole host of other dynamics within relationships.
Yeah. How would you categorize most of your relationships? It's not who am I in relationship with, but what's my social role? Is it a healthy social role? Is it the one that I really desire for this time? Is this me at my best? And just getting, standing 30,000 feet up, looking at how you are connecting with the variety of people in your life, that can be very, very helpful.
Right. And the Enneagram gives us a lot of space to look at, like, there are people who there are 3 types in particular who really like function within relationship. Like this is part of how they know themselves. And there are other types who that's not a primary thing for them. And so their relationships serve a different kind of purpose. But they're still important and they still impact us. And so understanding what that kind of dynamic is like, you may not like people very much, but you still have relationships and support, or you want relationships and support that you don't have. Like we are communal beings and we live in a society. And so we get some of that language and understanding from the Enneagram as well.
That's it. An 8th thing worth writing down, kind of got teased earlier, but how about your physical health and wellness? Anything that we do with our body is going to affect our inner life. We are embodied personalities. And so if, as was said earlier, if my sleep is crap or my diet's crap or exercise isn't part of my common rhythm, that may really affect how we feel internally. And again, just being non-judgmental, just being able to say, here's where I'm at in terms of my physical health and wellness. Yeah. Do you see the overlap there with Enneagram?
Oh, absolutely. Because Because especially to bring in sort of the opposite side of that, I am not a great example of a healthy person, but I know people who are actually unhealthy in the opposite direction. They spend too much time and energy on their body. And part of that is maybe because of comparison, because heart types are comparing themselves. Some types are comparing themselves to others, and that the physical presentation is a huge part of that comparison. Maybe people are putting too much faith or too much stock in the abilities of their bodies, and they're going to find out later that it's all a crapshoot because our bodies are temples of doom. Like, our relationship to our body is similar to our relationship to our emotions or our thoughts. And we need to have perspective on that, because we are, like, our body is part of who we are, and we are in our body. And if we're ignoring that or overemphasizing it, then we're going to be off balance.
Yep. St. Francis called his body brother ass, because on one side, the body is incredibly dumb. And on another side, it's kind of lovable, and you carry it around and it does all the things you need it to do. But
Right.
it is.
I'm pretty sure I got a lemon, but there's no lemon laws when it comes to bodies. So,
which is also worth bringing up. There's the physical health and wellness side of, like your rhythms, diet, exercise. There's also, for many, there are the chronic health conditions. For some of us, there might be recent changes in our health. Many of us are slowly growing older, and that is taking its effect. Enneagram's going to have a ton to say about that element of our lives as well. Yeah.
Right. And our perspective on it, because that is one place where there can be such a huge disconnect. Like, as your brain is just moving and cooking and your body starts to fail, now there's a disconnect between what you think you can do and what you actually can do. Right. For a lot of us with any kind of disease or disability that impacts how we are in our body, that is part of our lives, is the disconnect between what we think we can do and what we actually can do.
Yeah.
And the Enneagram does not solve that problem, but it is going to help give perspective and understanding in this place that can be so confusing and frustrating and unknown for so many of us.
Yep. TJ used a couple buzzwords here, but I just want to highlight them in terms of the way that he and I come to the world. As both of us experience health issues, TJ's type is much more likely to disconnect from their body, and my type is much more likely to be severely frustrated by their body. And in naming the source of the emotion and why we are feeling the way that we do and choose the paths that we do, incredibly helpful. And Enneagram has tons of wisdom on that. Ninth thing worth writing down are some of our cultural identity and factors. Many of us are very aware of this: gender, race, sexuality, cultural markers like one's religious identity. Some of us will, as part of our identity, talk about our mental life, be it, I have a neurodivergent child, to the whole range of things that may, be part of our mental life that we say, this is an identity marker for me. Writing those things down, saying how they affect us in the world. Again, Enneagram's going to have a lot of stuff to say, specifically about how we interpret those cultural factors.
Yeah. And there is an awful lot of space for more people to do work on this topic, the intersection of intersection and Enneagram. There's a lot of conversation right now about Western viewpoints on the Enneagram and Eastern viewpoints on the Enneagram. And like, things that are going on in Singapore are very different from what's happening in Houston, Texas, right? And the culture is different. And to be a white person in Houston is very different from being a white person in Singapore. And like, we could just keep going with all of the different ways that we identify ourselves, I come from a broken home. Like, all of these factors influence how we see ourselves and how we navigate the spaces around us. And if we're ignoring those factors, then we're going to get nowhere with a lot of stuff. And there's a good chance that we'll start to become a bull in a china shop. But acknowledging them and giving space to say, oh, my experience is actually very different from this person's experience right next to me because I'm white and they're not, or whatever else. That is sort of the core of what the Enneagram is. It's 9 different ways of seeing. It's a different lens on how we take information in and engage the world. And our cultural and identity factors are part of that.
Exactly right. And again, it's the case that just our type influences how we interpret all of these elements to ourselves. Like, when the 2 thinks about their age and the 8 thinks about their age, often the interpretation can be just very different. When the 3 talks about their race and the 6 talks about their race, their interpretation of race is probably going to be very different, even though they may be the same race and experience, like, in theory, a lot of the same, obstacles and benefits.
Right.
And so, but naming that ends up mattering. And then, as was said, what's the intersection here? How does Enneagram inform how we see those things?
Right.
Those are the big 9. The 10th spot is for our next podcast. We're going to jump into our next step material. We'll probably pick this up in 2025. TJ and I have outlined 7 steps for those who are doing Enneagram work. Where are you on these steps? And just kind of finding yourself. Here's the next thing for me or for you to work on can be incredibly helpful, because so often Enneagram's just kind of thrown at us like, here's your type and where you struggle, and here's the predictable thing that we can put on an Instagram post.
And by the way, that's the tip of an iceberg, and here's the rest of the iceberg. Yeah. Would you like to drink it?
Right. So what can I be working on would be a great question. So if you came with this list in hand, here are the 9 things, here's my reflection on these 9 questions. And then you're coming in and you're saying, okay, here's my Enneagram type. Having this in hand would be a fantastic companion to working through this material and having it actually have some relevance for you in your life.
Yeah. You could maybe go through this paper, your responses, and like circle 2 or 3 things and just like really spend some time going in deep on those 2 or 3 things.
Bang. Say you can't wait till next year. I have good news for you.
Ooh.
If you go to the Start Here podcast, which is our sister feed, season 3 has our early experiments with going through the next step material, and it hasn't changed a ton. It's changed a little bit. Sure. We moved some steps around, added one, but for the most part, a lot of our material is at the Start Here podcast, season 3. You can go through next step, and it's a worthwhile place to jump in. Or if you're in the year 2026, look for our book on this. It's fantastic. We're really proud of it, and you can find it probably on Amazon alone. And that's what I got.
Or if you know us, we might have copies.
Yeah, but there's.
Who knows?
Idealist that I am, I bought way too many copies of it, and my office is packed. I'll probably give you one for free.
There we go.
That's never happened with any of the other books that I've written. And by the way, if you sign up to be a paid member on our Patreon, I'll give you a copy of 7, which is sitting in the back corner over here. That's what I got. Anything else on these 10 steps or 10 things worth writing down?
I feel like this is going to be something that I'm probably going to come back to over and over again for the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Huh?
I think this is a good list of stuff to... I'm actively in therapy. I'm doing Enneagram study all the time. But man, I think it might be a good idea for me to do this exercise just to see where I'm at.
did the study here, printed it off, went on a dog walk, and was like, oh.
No judgments, remember? Assessment, no judgment.
I likewise. Start of the year. This is the start of the year journal exercise for me. So good. I'm glad it had that effect. Friends, as was said, if you want to see some of our best material right now, it's at aroundthecircle.org. Sign up to be a paying member, and you're going to see all sorts of great resources that we have, which includes drafts of our book, lots of our longer interviews with people informed in their type, just talking through their own experiences, each of the types. We're going to finish all 9 of our deep dive interviews by the beginning of 2025. And as we move into the new year, we're going to be posting more videos, more audio, lots and lots of resources there. And those are just going to just slowly be coming out, just like our recent interview with Joey Shuey. 20 questions. This is all fresh material, never been heard. In fact, this may be, like I've gotten to do the edit. This may be the most advanced material that you and I have done.
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun.
Yeah.
Oh, I love talking to her.
Well worth going and signing up again. That's it, aroundthecircle.org. And that's what I got. You got anything else, boss?
I got nothing, man.
CJ Wilson. It's officially awesome. I'm Jeff Cook. And hey, friends, who aren't just as interesting.